Yesterday, as the worst of the pandemic raged, childhood hunger skyrocketed. Even now, 1 in 6 kids may be living with hunger. Today, we start rebuilding, and tomorrow, we'll give them everything they need to grow up happy and strong. For their tomorrow, we're reimagining a world where every kid has the food they need to thrive. Visit nokidhungry.org/rebuild to find out what you can do for kids in your community.
As a community, we build empathy, curiosity, joy, and connection when we share stories with you. Welcome to Storytellers Project, part of the USA Today network.
Hi, I'm Lee Guidry, Children's Issues Reporter for the Daily Advertiser in Lafayette, Louisiana. We so appreciate you sharing your evening with us. Tonight, we're joining Humana, No Kid Hungry, and 5 Americans from across the nation to create community. Since 2016, the Storytellers Project has brought more than 100 shows each year to communities across the country. But we've canceled our in-person season as part of the USA Today's network's response to the ongoing pandemic. So, we've handpicked incredible storytellers and inspiring people to bring you a show about the meaning of home and all the rebuilding and reimagining that requires, that will be charming, funny, relatable, and touching. First, let's say hi to our storytellers tonight. Chaletta Brundage of Minnesota, who has family ties to Lake Charles. Justin Calais of Lafayette. Brittany Cook of Baton Rouge. And Charles Garrett of Lafayette, and Diana Catch-Lennon of Lafayette. And we will have a Q&A with Pamela Taylor, Chief Communications and Marketing Officer for No Kid Hungry, so we can learn a little more about how all of us can help. Because tonight's show benefits No Kid Hungry, and you can donate right now by going to nokidhungry.org/USA Today. Here's why. 1 in 6 kids in America today could face hunger because of the coronavirus. In the wake of the pandemic, millions of children are still living with hunger. Rebuilding starts with feeding every child in every community. With generous support from Humana, No Kid Hungry is helping schools and communities get the food, support, and equipment they need to feed children. Humana is proud to support No Kid Hungry and helping to connect kids to healthy meals, and they're making your donation go even further by matching all donations through this page up to $25,000. Child hunger is a very real problem in America. But unlike a lot of things, there are real workable solutions, and No Kid Hungry and their partners are experts at making them work. This crisis has shown that unemployment and hunger can touch any family, anywhere, anytime. And it's on all of us to ensure kids get the food they need, regardless of circumstance. No Kid Hungry is singularly focused on not just fighting childhood hunger, but ending it for good. Through emergency grants, hands-on guidance, and rallying the right people, like you, they're helping put meals on the table for hungry children. Again, you can be part of the solution at nokidhungry.org/USA Today. So tonight's show is not a TED Talk. It's not Toastmasters, not a how-to talk, an inspirational speech, an educational lecture, or a slideshow. We won't sell you anything except maybe a subscription. And of course, we're asking for donations to No Kid Hungry to end childhood hunger. This is storytelling, and storytelling is based on visiting. You open your heart and your mind, and you pay attention to a person you care about and want to feel closer to. So we invite you to do that with us tonight. Some of these storytellers will be polished and professional. Some will be casual and conversational. We ask you to receive all of them because that's how community change happens. We believe creating empathy and understanding is vital, especially in times of uncertainty. All right, I'm excited to welcome up our first teller, Chaletta Brundage.
Hi, my name is Charletta Brundage. I live in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, but my roots run deep in Southwest Louisiana. My father was born there. My mother has relatives there, and I got my first job out of college right there in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I remember it like it was yesterday. Hurricane Laura came ashore and decimated the city of Lake Charles, caused millions of dollars in damages in Southwest Louisiana. All of my father's sisters and brothers, my first cousins, live right there in the Bayou State. And so after Laura blew through, causing devastation, I checked in on my kinfolks to ask them how they were doing, and everybody was okay, the folks who stayed behind. Everybody was safe, happy, and healthy. There were a few blown windows, a couple of down trees, but at that point, no loss of lives. And I remember going on Facebook and telling all my friends, thank you for your prayers. My family is safe. I went to bed thinking everything was okay. The next day, I got a call from my mother telling me that not one, not two, not three, not four, but five of my relatives had all died overnight from carbon monoxide poisoning due to a generator at their home. I could not believe it. We had just checked in, found out that everybody was okay. I cried, I grieved, but my family's legacy is giving. We have always been givers. And so I looked around my house to think, how could I continue the legacy of my aunt, two uncles, and two first cousins who had just passed away? How could I put my grief aside to help the people picking up the pieces of their lives, trying to rebuild in Lake Charles, the hometown of my father, his birthplace, where I got my first job, where I fell in love for the very first time. And I looked around my house and I thought, what do I have? Even if I took all the money from the four of my children's college fund, I may be able to pick up a tree or clear a road. But I wanted to do something big. I wanted to do something great because all the news reports I had seen, I kept seeing kids who were standing in line for food, who were standing in line with their parents for shoes and clothing and water and tarp. I wanted to do something for them. They had lost everything. And I thought, I can't do something for one kid without doing it for another. But what do I have? And I heard God say in my spirit, every little bit helps. So I prayed and realized that I've got these autism children's books that I've written. 3 of my 4 children have been diagnosed with special needs. They have autism. And I wrote children's books to educate people about autism. Cameron Goes to School is the story of my daughter's journey as she heads off to kindergarten as a little Black girl who's nonverbal. And Daniel Finds His Voice is the story of my son who was nonverbal until he learned to talk through music. I called up the publisher and I said, I'm going to get all of my books out of the warehouse. I'm going to load them up into my Camping World RV. I'm going to drive down to Lake Charles and I'm going to give away these books. And then something magical happened. Folks who publish children's books, who are writers, right here in Minnesota where I live now, all decided that they would donate books to my cause. I was overwhelmed. I went down with about 3,000 books for children. And then Manhattan Toy Company, a toy distributor right here in Minnesota, heard about what I was doing, and they loaded me up with 2,000 plushies so that kids would have a new friend to sleep with. And I thought, this is great. I'm going to go down to Lake Charles. I'm going to give away these books. I'm going to give away these toys, and I'm going to see these kids smile. This is going to be incredible. So I load up the RV. I don't even have room for my kids because it's full of books and plushies, and I'm feeling good, and I want to get there, but I don't have a way to contact anybody Television stations are down. News wires are down. There's no way to get the word out. So I got on Facebook. I said, meet me at the Calcasieu Public Library in Lake Charles, the main branch. I'm going to have books and plushies for your kids. See you there Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And I'm driving down in my RV thinking this is going to be great. I'm feeling really good about going down there and blessing the kids and, just making them smile and seeing them feel good until I got over that I-10 bridge. And then reality set in. I got to the top of that bridge and I could see down. And I saw holes in rooftops. I saw cars overturned. I saw trees, tree limbs, and tree branches lining the roads. I saw people standing in line for a hot meal with no shoes on. I looked at my husband at the time and I said, we got to turn this RV around. These people need shoes. They need clothes. They need money. They need transportation. They need somebody to fix their roof. They need somewhere to sleep. We're coming down here with an RV full of plushies and books. They're going to run us out of town. These people are going to cuss us out. I don't even have a hot dog to give away. And he looked at me and said, if this is what God put on your heart, this is what we're going to do. I took a deep breath. We got to the Calcasieu Parish Library, and we actually had to clear out a spot because tree limbs were everywhere. The library storage was destroyed along with thousands of books. The roof blew away. Water from Hurricane Laura and then Delta destroyed what little inventory they had left. We got back on Facebook and said, hey, we're here. Anybody want to come down and pick up a book and a plushie? We've got one for you and your child because we care. In a matter of moments, cars started lining up. People started walking up. Before I knew it, there were about 30 cars all waiting to get a book and a plushie. And here I thought they were going to run us out of town. They were running to us because they felt the spirit of love that we were bringing them. Teachers got cases of books so that they could give them out to their students once schools opened back up. Grandparents and parents brought their children and grandchildren so that they could get a book and a toy. One mom put her hand out of the window of her car and said, thank you for not forgetting us. Thank you for caring. The kids were ecstatic. My ex-husband, Sean, looked at me and he said, I know what Santa feels like at the mall and on Christmas Day. Because these kids were overjoyed to get a book and a plushie. One dad even told me, this is the first time we felt human. We've been in line for tarp and water and meals. We've been in line trying to contact the insurance company. But this is the first time that we've been in line to do something fun. So many people showed up, they had to call the police to direct traffic because people were blocking the streets and lining the sidewalks, trying to get to us, trying to get to the books, trying to get to the plushies, trying to get to the love. We gave away thousands of books and toys in less than 2 hours. Every little bit helps. Just look around. You can always find a way to be a blessing to someone else.
Chaletta, thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability and sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
And now we want to thank Humana. Humana is sponsoring Storytellers project shows nationally and now virtually because they believe that sharing stories makes for healthier people and healthier communities. And we need these connections to each other, to health, now more than ever. With the COVID-19 vaccines available where you live, consider talking to your healthcare professional about what's right for you. You can visit humana.com for more information about what they're doing each and every day to connect you to better health in your community. And remember, Humana is proud to support No Kid Hungry in helping to connect kids to healthy meals, and they're making your donation go even further by matching all donations through this page up to $25,000. And now for our second storyteller, Justin Calais.
When I was a kid in school, a topic we often talked about were different cities around the world. And I knew my little town of Brobridge, Louisiana, a great little town, didn't compare to New York and Paris and Tokyo. And seeing these big cities interest me. And ever since I was a little kid, I said, I have to see all these cities. I have to travel. And I didn't think that Bro Bridge was going to be my end all. My junior year of high school, I got my first opportunity to leave home. I was enrolled into a residential high school for gifted kids. It was about 150 miles north of Brew Bridge, and I saw this as a big stepping stone that I was taking to become that world traveler that I said to be when I was a kid. Well, I think I might have bit off more than I could chew, and my grades reflected that. So I ended up going back home my senior year, and I got back to making A's and B's that I was used to. But those A's and B's did not cure the disappointment I had that I had to return home. It was time for college, and I saw this as my second chance to leave home and never come back. I looked up schools to make sure that the school was in line with my educational goals, but I also scouted the cities to make sure that I was going to a school that I'd be able to thrive and not have to come home. Well, I wasn't as good at college as I thought I was going to be, and I was even worse at picking roommates. All that stress led me to the decision to take a break for a semester. So between the semester I was taking my break and the semester I was going to return, I was gathering myself together and saying, when I return back to school, everything's gonna be on the up and up. I'm gonna make a bang. And then something strange started brewing in my brain, and I started to have these intrusive thoughts. And at first, I thought they would go away, but they kind of grew more and more. And I said, something's not right with my brain. And I remember approaching my mom, and my mom was trying to figure things out. She's never dealt with something like this before. So I ended up going to a mental facility. This was Memorial Day weekend 2013. I remember it because we went to the ER and they said, you got Lake Charles and Shreveport were your choices, because Memorial Day weekend is a weekend where a lot of people need beds. So I ended up at this hospital in Lake Charles. It wasn't a resort, but I knew I needed to be there to figure out what was going on. So when I first arrived there, I was devastated. I felt so bad for not being able to control these thoughts. And I didn't know what my life was going to be from that point on. I eventually got used to the hospital's routines. I got used to the 3 meals a day. I even picked up a small habit of smoking that didn't last long. And I refound my love for coloring like I did in school. But that was kind of a placebo effect. That good feeling didn't last long. And I started feeling those intrusive thoughts come back. But I had the feeling that I had to go home. There was no place I wanted to be more than home, which was conflicted with how I spent most of my young life trying to find ways to get away from home. I remember I was trying to fake smiles and fake that I was okay so that I would be released. Well, I eventually was released a few days later, and I went back home. And I remember my family was there with open arms welcoming me back. But I asked my mom to take a walk with me. And we walked around the neighborhood. And during that walk, I revealed to my mom that I was not okay, that these intrusive thoughts were still harboring in my brain, and I didn't know what to do. I fell in the street, and I'm a big guy, and she's a little woman, and she was trying so hard to keep me up. But she said, I got you. And with her help and the help of my family, we found me doctors in the area. We even found a support group. And not only did this support group have a group for people dealing with mental health issues, there was a group for the family members of those that dealt with mental health issues. And my mom attended them with me religiously. And I was feeling I didn't deserve this love and support that this my family was giving me because I tried to run away from home so bad. It was in my thoughts almost every day when I was young that I was not going to stay in Brobridge, which means I would have to leave my family. I mean, I would visit, I would call, I wouldn't just completely desert my family, but I just knew that that small population wasn't something that I wanted to stay a part of until the end of my life. But through my mental health journey, my family had shown me that my home isn't just a physical address, it's a place of love, support, and healing. And I desperately needed that healing. So my family showed me that home isn't to shackle you. It isn't a place where you have to stay. It's not a place from birth to death. And that home can be a place where you get yourself together so that you can advance. And there's nothing wrong, no matter how many times you return home, you should not be disappointed in yourself. And I want to thank my family for that.
Thank you, Justin, for being so authentic with us.
During this crisis, millions of Americans are struggling to afford food for their children. No Kid Hungry is here to help. We're working with organizations nationwide to feed children during and beyond this crisis. If you need help, simply visit nokidhungry.org/help to find free meals for your kids. No questions asked, no registration needed. It's just healthy food for kids who need it. Go to nokidhungry.org/help today.
This show is benefiting No Kid Hungry, a national nonprofit dedicated to connecting children with food. We have plenty of food in the U.S. and nutrition programs that work. The problem is not enough children have access to them. And as a children's issues reporter, I've seen it firsthand as schools and families grapple with this here in Southwest Louisiana. No Kid Hungry gives schools and community groups the funds and guidance needed to launch and grow programs that feed more kids. That includes school breakfasts, summer meals served at schools and community centers, after-school meals, and emergency feeding programs during times of crisis. They do research and they advocate for solutions that work. When you donate to No Kid Hungry, you help break down whatever barriers stand between a hungry child and a healthy meal. Consider donating now at nokidhungry.org/USA Today. And now for our third storyteller, Brittany Cook.
So it was November 2016 when I met Abdullah. It was at the end of my year and a half of doing my dissertation research in Jordan, and I met him at an olive oil tasting workshop. And I thought he was nice, but I didn't want to give him my number and come across as if I were hitting on him or something. I was in a relationship. I just thought he was a nice dude. So I was excited when our mutual friend was like, "Hey, Brittany, why don't you give Abdullah your number so that you can help him with his English and he can help you with your Arabic?" It's like, all right, cool. Yeah, sounds good. I had no idea in that moment that 5 years later, we'd be getting ready to celebrate the first birthday of our little girl in the little home that we've created. But I need to back up for a second and tell you how we got there. So it was the end of my field work. We exchanged information. We're friends. And then I had to go back home. I knew I would be coming back to Jordan the following summer. So we kept in contact. My relationship I had been in kind of fell apart. And Abdullah and I kept talking. And then it developed into kind of, maybe this is a relationship. Maybe something is here. And so we decided, okay, in the summer when I'm back in Jordan, we'll see what could happen. And for Abdullah, one of the most important things in his life is his family. And so he was like, okay, well, when you're here, why don't you come and meet my family? It was Ramadan, which means, if you're Muslim and it's Ramadan, you're fasting from sun up to sundown. You end the day with a big iftar, which is like a big meal to break your fast. And it's really just a festive atmosphere. And you often end up staying up late and having more sweets and tea and coffee. And it's great. So he was like, come have iftar with my family, get to know them, and we'll give you your own room. You'll have your own space. When you want to go home the next day, we'll take you home. You can stay for iftar number 2, or we can take you home earlier if you've had enough of us. I was okay, great. Took the bus. Him and his sisters picked me up. And from the minute I met them, they were so welcoming and nice. Oh, what do you want for dinner? Come on, we'll make whatever you want. And just joking and so warm and welcoming. And so we had iftar. There were little ones running around. At first, they were kind of shy. And then by the end of the night, we're playing that hot coals, hit your hand game. And it was great. I go to bed and I get up in the morning. And often when I have iftar with someone, I like to fast that day, right? So I'm kind of feeling the festivities with them. And so I had already decided, okay, I'll stay for iftar the second day, and you can just take me home after iftar. That way you're not driving and hungry and messing up your day. So I wake up in the morning, and Abdullah's mom was like, hey, why don't you come to the kitchen and I'll give you some milk and some breakfast. I'm making food for the little kids. And I was like, no, it's okay. I'm fasting. I stayed up late last night and ate food with everybody. So I'm good. I'm ready to fast for the whole day. She's like, no. Come to the kitchen, have some nice breakfast, and you can be like the little kids and fast the rest of the day. It's like, okay, I can't tell her no. I'm like, all right, fine, great. Follow her to the kitchen, and she shuts the door behind me. That's kind of weird. I was like, maybe because we're going to eat food, maybe she doesn't want people to see. I don't know. And then she, as my mother-in-law does, she got straight to the point. She just looks at me. She's like, what are your intentions with Abdullah? I just stop, in my tracks. There's a little bit of a language barrier. I speak Arabic, but she speaks a different dialect. I thought maybe I misunderstood. She looks at me again. She's like, what do you want from Abdullah? And so, I'm kind of speechless. We're just, starting to date, but dating really isn't a thing in his culture. And so, and she's like, okay, you go back to the US, you finish your studies, and you come back and you marry Abdullah. Little did I know she had the plan all set. But it took us a little while to get there. At the end of that summer, we had our first conflict. I was about to go home again at the end of this summer, and we had a dinner with a bunch of friends. And at the end of the dinner, as you do with friends you're not going to see for a while, you don't know when you'll see them next, I gave everybody a hug. And we get back into the car, and Abdullah's kind of upset. I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, did you have to hug everybody? I mean, I know some of them you're really close with, but you're not even close. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you hugged all the dudes. And I was just kind of taken aback. I'm like, what? And we talked it out, and I'm just like, this is not something I'm going to change. I'm not going to compromise on this. This is, this is culturally okay with me. There's nothing wrong. And I just start crying because I feel like this is the end. This is the breaking point. There we go. We found it. This is the thing we can't compromise on. It's over. And he's like, why are you crying? I'm like, that's it. If we can't find a solution to this, then I don't know how this is going to work. And he just looks at me. He goes, okay, yes, this is a topic that I have strong feelings about, but it's not worth giving up on our relationship unless that's what you want. He's like, I know we can find a way through it, even if it's just understanding each other's points of view. And that was a moment where I was like, okay, we can do this. We have a lot of cultural differences to bridge, but we can do this. I go back to the US, we're still talking. And as we're talking, he mentions how he always envisioned his partner and the mother of his children being Muslim. I come from a pretty diverse area in the US, and I was like, why is that an issue? But after being with his family, I understood how much kind of praying 5 times a day, the different holidays, all this structures your life in a really particular way. And he wanted it to be a team effort in raising the children and having a Muslim home. So I told him, all right, I'll think about this and I'll just think about it. I don't know. So I did research, and after some time, I was like, okay, I started to see Islam as, some changes to Christianity, and I could get on board with it. But in my true academic fashion, I wrote out a manifesto of exactly how I jived with Islam, things I had problems with or was uncomfortable with, things I thought we might see differently. And I told him, hey, look, here's my viewpoints on everything I've been reading and thinking about lately. I will convert. I think that this is a spiritual practice that I agree with. However, my Islam is going to be different than your Islam, and I want you to understand that. And I was ready for an academic discussion of all the points I had written out. But in our true fashion, I was all ready. And he was like, okay, yeah, great. So later I take the Shahada, which is how you become Muslim. And I just did it on the phone with someone. All you say is, I believe in God and one God, and that Muhammad is the prophet. But I didn't have this big moment. It was just a phone call. And then later Abdullah messages me. He shows me a screenshot from his cousin's Facebook page, checked into the city I was living in Lexington, Kentucky. He goes, hey, my cousin is in Lexington, Kentucky right now. I think this is, right? It's Lexington? Yeah. He's like, all right, if I tell him about us and that you're there, I'm sure him and his wife would want to meet you. Like, okay. An hour later, I'm in the mosque with his cousin and his cousin's wife and her whole family. And his cousin's wife kind of leans over to me and she's like, hey, have you said the Shahada yet? Did you convert? I was like, yeah, but I haven't done it at the mosque yet. And, the mosque was far. I didn't have a car, And she's like, well, do you want to do it now? I was like, okay. So they said something to the imam, and after the prayer, he comes up to me and you just repeat after him and say the Shahada. And after I did, everyone in the mosque is cheering, and the women kind of surround me and hug me. One woman takes off her head cover and puts it on me. And it was just this beautiful moment. And by complete serendipity, Abdullah's family was there videotaping, and they're sending the video to Abdullah, and he can share in this moment. And it was just a beautiful kind of embracing into this community. And it was the beginning of me and Abdullah using kind of, having this big compromise. And Islam has become kind of a foundation of our family. And even though we still have to compromise on things, we see things differently. And like our 2 different religions, Bill and I found that we have more in common in terms of values and points of view than we have differences. And coming from those two different viewpoints has really forced us to be intentional about communication and always respect each other. And that's the foundation of our beautiful home and our new little beginning family. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany, for sharing your adventure with us. Now we will hear from a person on the front line of this work. Pamela Taylor, Chief Communications and Marketing Officer for No Kid Hungry, so we can learn a little more about how all of us can help. Here, she's in conversation with Storytellers Project founder Megan Finnerty.
With that, I want to bring up today's Q&A. We're here with Pamela Taylor. She's our Chief Communications Officer and Marketing Officer for No Kid Hungry. And she wants to help us understand a little bit more about how all of us can help. Hi, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Aren't these stories like, it's a lot, right? We so appreciate all of the work that you and your organization does. So let's get into it. In the decade before the pandemic, No Kid Hungry and its partner organizations had really made huge strides in cutting childhood hunger. But now some of those gains have been lost. Can you talk to us about that 1 in 6 number, kind of what the situation looks like this school year?
Yeah, so, in 2018, we saw some of the lowest rates of childhood hunger that we had seen in a decade. The numbers were about 1 in 7 children, almost 1 in 8 children were facing hunger. During the pandemic, right around March of last year, when everything started to shut down, school doors were closing, and schools were trying to do just what Peggy described, we saw that number go as close to 1 in 4. And we've seen some improvements because of a lot of things that have happened. So the number is this year around 1 in 6 children may be living with hunger. It's not where we want it to be, but we're definitely starting to trend back in the right direction.
That's great. That's really what we're here is, right? Like we said before, that there is a solution to these things. I wanted to talk about, you guys really worked hard last year to adjust some of the policies at the federal and state and local levels. Can you talk a little bit more about that flexibility in distributing food and some of the things that you found worked and what you're trying to make durable?
Exactly. So just like everyone else, we had to figure things out quickly. And one of the things that we learned right away is there are parameters and restrictions in place on where kids can consume food. When food is given out for school breakfast or lunch or after school meals, that needs to be done on school property. Well, what happens when schools are closed? What are children supposed to do? So we had to, as an organization, work with our advocacy groups, our own government relations teams, and make sure the federal government was willing to make some adjustments so that schools and parents and teachers could get food to kids that weren't at school. So we saw opportunities where parents could come by and pick up meals for their kids without having to have their kids in their car. Initially, when this first started, the kids had to be present. That wasn't the safest and healthiest thing to do. So the federal government recognized that that was probably not the best option, lifted some waivers by the USDA so that parents could come and pick up meals for their kids and take them back home. A lot of what Peggy just described, where they used their school buses and they went into neighborhoods and were able to drop off meals for children. Everybody had to get super creative and figure out what policies do we need to look at differently so that we can meet the need of the people where they are during the time that we're in. A lot of those policy changes, though, have been implemented even beyond where we were this time last year. We've seen things like SNAP benefit increases for families so that there is additional money for meals and to get groceries and other things that their families need to have nutritious meals every day. We're seeing things that we just didn't know. How long were people going to be out of work? How long were we going to be able to provide the meals that everyone needed. So these additional SNAP benefits turned out to be really, really beneficial to families.
Thank you for going into that kind of detail, because I think it's hard for people in the abstract, like government policies and bureaucracies, right? It's kind of hard to picture. So just the specificity around No Kid Hungry and some of its partners saying back to the federal government, hey, if you have 3 kids in a house and they all have different class schedules and they're all different ages, it might be physically impossible for the mom to find, or the dad to find, an hour when they're not all in class, or they all have a break and they can all pile into the car, get the food, prove they exist.
That's right.
It's a nightmare. Yeah.
That's
and so
right.
I really hear that, things, anyway, it's complicated, but another thing that came up for a lot of us last year, in addition to being, I think, really aware of bureaucracies, is how not everybody, depending on where you volunteered or where you lived, might have imagined how widespread hunger is. And after seeing so many nights on the light of news coverage of lines at food banks all across the country, do you feel like the pandemic exposed a hunger crisis? Did it create a hunger crisis? Was it already there? Help us understand, kind of from your position, what that looks like.
It did both, right? Okay. Hunger oftentimes is referred to as a hidden crisis. You can't see hunger people all the time. And so what the pandemic did is it brought hunger to everybody's television, everybody's, mindset, because you couldn't help, like you said, but ignore the hours-long lines at food banks. What it also did is it made hunger much more visible. In other words, people started to see their neighbors in line and their kids' classmates in line and their, friends and families from church in line. People who didn't experience hunger before were certainly facing it in a way that they had never done before. And I think it was important that we tried to make sure people did not feel any kind of shame or stigma around having this moment that no one planned for. No one planned to lose their jobs. No one planned for schools to be closed. No one planned for everything to shut down. And we've heard many times people say, many of us are, one paycheck away from a disaster. And this is what was revealed. This was what the crisis revealed. In addition to all the things that the crisis was, it revealed another crisis. And so I think people had a different understanding and appreciation for the crisis of hunger. And this was something that it made everyone kind of step back and say, wow, I didn't know that it was so pervasive. I didn't know that it was so close to me. I didn't know it could come into my own kitchen. And that was something that I think everyone kind of really got a very up close and personal view with last year.
I mean, that feels very true. I know I'd have Zoom calls with my family, and it was a conversation I had with my siblings. We all live in different cities all throughout the West, and each of us talked about, where were we funneling our donations and how many people it seemed like needed our help, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic. We have time for one more question, and I want to go back to that 1 in 6 number. We know it's down from at the peak of the pandemic, so we have a lot to be confident that your donations can make a difference. But talk to us for a second about, a lot of people are aware that they need to donate. How does our donation today, where does that money go? How much money have you already donated? Kind of give us a sense of scope.
Sure. So the first thing I want to say is the generosity and just sheer humanity of America showed up last year when people saw, neighbors and television screens full of food bank lines. Donations poured into No Kid Hungry, and we are so eternally grateful for everyone that showed up for us. Our corporate partners showed up for us. Partners that we had never worked with before wanted to know, what can we do to help? And things that people didn't even think about because, like I said, no one had faced this before. How do we do this? What do we need? How do we transport a cafeteria full of food to neighborhoods all over our school district? So the money went towards refrigerators and portable coolers and portable heaters, and some areas where people couldn't get to school to get the food. They needed transportation. And so school districts bought vans and shuttles so that they could load them up with bags of food so that they could go into neighborhoods just like Peggy described. There were so many things. We needed PPE, of course. We needed to make sure everyone that was going out to distribute food or hand out food, they were safe and healthy. We had inclement weather, all over the country. Depending on where you live, it could have been really hot or super cold. And we wanted to provide funding so that they could protect themselves from the elements. This was going on every single day for about 16 to 18 months. And here we are. What we are so grateful for is since March of 2020, the numbers just came out yesterday. No Kid Hungry has been able to donate $98 million in grants to schools and school districts and community-based organizations all across the country, to about 2,300 different schools and school districts. That is because people have been so very generous to us. And just like you said, if you could today or sometime in the near future, go to nokidhungry.org/USA Today, we would be so, so grateful. We've not seen a decline in our donations. People understand the crisis. They understand the need. And they also understand how important it is to make sure we have no kid going hungry.
Oh man, Pam, thank you so, so, so much for your time today, bringing us these messages, walking us through these talking points. And thank you for doing your job every day. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Wow. Thank you, Pamela and Megan, for those insights and that conversation. And now our fourth teller, Diana Cash Lennon.
If I had to use one word to describe home, it would probably be dynamic, because my home was not one place, but many places. We moved 4 times in 11 years during when I was growing up in my school years. And I was always worried about fitting in. And so I kind of would rebel sometimes to counteract that fitting in. My dad worked for the federal government. And when we got a promotion, it sometimes meant moving city to city, and it sometimes meant moving state to state. And I remember one time when we were moving, one of these moves, it was a long cross-country move, and I was in the very back of our yellow Plymouth station wagon. A lot of people had station wagons back then, and this was a Woody with that wood-looking contact paper on the side. And I was in the very back, piled on all the luggage, and I was pretending like I was arguing. I was waving my hands and making these faces like, what's going on? And I wasn't mad at anybody in the car, and nothing had happened to make me angry. But I was watching people around me in the cars and saying, oh, I wonder if they're watching me, because I always liked acting. So I was just doing something that I like to do. So this particular move, we were going from Rockville, Maryland to Fort Collins, Colorado, about 1,600 miles. And we had this family of suburbanites moving to cowboy country. So it was going to be interesting. Wonder what it was going to be like being out there. And so usually when we get somewhere, I would acclimate pretty easily, but I was a teenager. I was going into 9th grade, and I had puberty and all these things going on. And I was a little bigger than other people, so I was self-conscious. Was I going to fit in? And I just didn't know. So I was excited, but I was scared, because there were going to be new people and new places and new friends and a new school. All these things that I had to look forward to, yet I had a little bit of trepidation. So we finally got settled, and school finally started. And most times, the first day of school, people would say, oh, we want to welcome the new girl from wherever. And this was good, because a lot of people, several people would come up to you after class, want to know where you were from, how'd you get to Fort Collins, etc. And that was a good part. But then the bad part would be that sometimes there were people in class who would say, okay, this is the girl whose life we need to make miserable. And they would try to do that just by picking on you or whatever. So some time went on, and a friend asked me to go to a place called College Pinball. And I was like, College Pinball, what's that? And she said they're just a hangout place. They have pinball machines, foosball tables, music, stuff. I said, well, College Pinball, it sounds like, do the college kids go there? And she says, oh, yeah, but lots of ninth graders go there. Everybody hangs out. It's a cool place to go. So I went. It was somewhat dark inside. So I kind of felt a little hidden because I knew my parents probably wouldn't want me going to this strange place with people who I didn't really know. But of course I went anyway. And I started watching kids playing foosball, and I liked the game, and I thought I could probably do that. So I watched and watched, and I played and played, and I got really good. I had a kind of a little stance that I would take on, and I learned a technique called stuffing, which is where you kind of shake your wrist with your three-man when their goalie has the ball, and they're trying to score, but you try to hit it in and beat them, and it's really a cool shot. And so I got very good at the game and had a lot of people cheering me on, and I'm thinking, this is great. I feel really good, and I'm just, these people are accepting me. So anyway, that was one of my experiences there. But I did feel the acceptance when I was hanging out at College Pinball. So I hung out there a lot. One of the ultimate tests of some of the people in this group was shoplifting. And I am embarrassed to say that I shoplifted, but I did. And at that time I was told, it's thrilling to get away with something. Nobody ever gets caught. Everybody does it. The store owners expect this to happen, and been given all these reasons to do something illegal. So, I thought about it, and late summer, we went to a store called the Denver, which is like Macy's or JCPenney's, big department store. And everybody in my family went except my mom. So I had my dad, my brother, and my two sisters. My dad was buying tickets to the Gladys Knight and the Pips concert at Red Rocks Amphitheater down south of Denver. And I was just going to wander around while they were doing that. So I had my blue jean bib overalls on, and wandering in the store, I spotted a locket. So I stuck it in the pocket, and almost immediately I felt someone was watching me. Someone's following me. Something's going on. I just felt a presence. So I walked into the bathroom, and I thought, I'm just going to get rid of the evidence. I'm going to flush it down the toilet. And while I was thinking, my little sister walked in and said, come on, it's time to go. So I didn't give it another thought. I met the rest of my family, walked out of the store, and immediately was taken by the elbow and said, we want to talk to you about those earrings in your pocket. And I was like stunned. So he took it, and as we're walking in, I said, well, it's not earrings, it's a locket. And he said, we still want to talk to you. Like, okay, I'm trying to be a smarty pants. So he took me into an office with nothing else, nobody else. I just sat there. I just was left there to think, to wonder what was going to happen. Of course, I was scared to death. I had already been embarrassed and humiliated when I walked out the door. So I sat there, which seemed like forever. They finally came and got me. They put me it took me back outside. My family's still standing there, put me into the back of a police car by myself again, which again seemed like forever to think and worry. And my heart's just sinking. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? What am I going to do? Finally, they released me to my dad and my family, who took me home. I was immediately punished. My overalls were thrown away. And of course, as a ninth grader, I'm thinking, they don't love me. They don't care. They don't understand. They don't want me to have any friends, not thinking that I did something illegal. But what I realized is they were trying to keep me on the right path. This is realizing much later when I had kids. They were trying to keep me on the right path. They were trying to show me that choices had consequences. They were trying to show me right from wrong. So I learned that perspective was a good thing to do. And there's two important things about that. One, I never shoplifted again. It was a good thing that I got caught and and nip that in the bud. And the other thing was, in addition to being somewhat rebellious, I was always the sticker upper for people. If I'd see somebody alone, I might go talk to them at school, or I'd say, "Hey, are you okay? Is somebody picking on you?" And because I was always bigger, I could kind of intimidate that person if they were picking on the underdog. So ironically, moving our homes gave stability, gave family stability, financial stability, moral stability. And that change of perspective became very important as I grew older. So although I was a teenager full of doubt and fear, I learned that rebellion is not the best way to gain confidence in friends and acceptance. And I realized also that no matter how many times I move, that my home is where my family is, and that family still loves me, warts and all. So I'm thankful for that.
Thank you, Diana, for taking us on that journey with you. Tonight's show also is supported by Cox Communications, and we're so excited. Cox is sponsoring the Storyteller Project because they believe in connecting our community with each other and with the people and passions they care about the most. From FaceTime chats and video conferences that make us feel closer to people who are far apart, to the streaming shows and movies that give us something to share with the people we love, Cox uses technology to connect us to each other and to each other's hearts. And Cox is working hard to close the digital divide through Connect to Compete program for school-age children. You can learn more at cox.com/C2C with the number 2. Connecting is exactly what tonight is all about. So let's connect with our final storyteller, Charles Garrett of Lafayette.
Hello, how you guys doing? So the kids and I, we engage in this practice where they basically give me feedback on my performance as their dad. As crazy as that sounds, that is what we do. So my daughter, she's the truth sayer. She's my harshest critic. Strangely intuitive for someone so small. When she, like I said, she's the hardest critic. So that being said, you can expect, to take it with a grain of salt because she's going to throw a lot of salt at you. Good thing though is she always says it with a hug, and I appreciate that 100%. My son, he is extremely thoughtful and introspective. He pretty much cuts me the most slack. He sees all the good in everything that I do. So when he does try to communicate, any grievance that he has, I take the time to listen and to really pay attention because, he's usually spot on. Well, one of these moments during our session, giving dad feedback, which never goes well. It never ever goes well, no matter how much I want it to. It never goes well. During one of these sessions, I guess I was distracted pretty seriously. And my daughter, she noticed this and asked, Dad, what's wrong? And like I always do, I told her the truth and told her, that I was thinking about something that happened earlier. And without even looking up, my son, he was messing with a Lego set, engineering some kind of mass space station that he, typical position for my boy. He says without looking up, without missing a beat, Dad, we worry about the past and we worry about the future and the future. So we continued on, and, not after I apologized, of course, and we ventured on with the session. Later on that evening, I was thinking about what he had said and, how relevant it was. And I started to think about all the different homes that I was exposed to, because I was really grateful at that moment that I had those tiny creatures living with me. So I thought about my roommates, I thought about the different homes, I thought about the moments of growth, and in that brainstorming of instances, a memory came to the surface of the art house. And it was this place that I lived. The art house was a artist commune, and I had the privilege of calling it home. So I guess I can't tell you about being a writer at an artist commune without first telling you how I became a writer, right? So I've been in love with writing as long as I could remember, but the first moment that I knew was, fourth grade. We were given a book report and we had to summer reading for The Call of the Wild, a great book. I'm sure most of us know this book. And the book report was nice and easy. It was 3 pages, no muss, no fuss. Well, I turned in 13 pages of what you would now call fan fiction. I got a C for the project because I, for one, did not follow directions, and 2, I didn't finish the story, but I knew that writing was pretty much what I was going to do for the rest of my life. With that being said, fast forward a few years, and I'm a writer in Lafayette, Louisiana, which is oil and gas country. And it wasn't the place for a writing scene for someone my age. So I decided to go to school in New Orleans and to get out of my hometown and to, do some growing. Unfortunately, because of unforeseen circumstances, when I got to New Orleans and started, enrolled in school, I was homeless for the first maybe 3 months of the first semester. What I would do is go to class, after the last class in the evening, sneak into the classroom, find the corner furthest away from the door, and, tent up right there and try to catch some Z's. In the morning, the janitors would come in to change the trash cans every morning, and they would slam these heavy wooden doors, and that became my alarm clock for the longest time. But when I got to New Orleans, I knew it felt like home. There was not a place that I could visit, not a street that I could visit, or a block where there wasn't inspiration just washing over me. The pen never stopped moving. One of these evenings when I was out exploring NOLA, I ran into a familiar from Lafayette, from my hometown. And she told me about this house that she lived in. And it was very artsy. There had rooms up for rent. And for me to bring my portfolio. And she thought I'd really, really dig it. So, of course, I gathered my portfolio and headed over to 1614 Esplanade. When I didn't know what I was going to walk up to, but when I got there, there was this 1920s style bordello. Felt like it had like 20-something rooms. Large kitchen, large living room. I mean, the place was, 10-foot ceilings. It was just an amazing place. I had to face the fact that I was dealing with 15 different visual artists that were living in this artist commune. I say 15, there could have been more, there could have been less, but me and another gentleman from Baltimore, Maryland, we were being voted in that night. And I was really, really appreciative to be able to spend time with other artists. With people who were just as quirky, just as neurotic, who loved art just as much as I did. For the first couple of months I was there, though, it was kind of terrifying to get caught up in the mix of big city kids. We would go on these missions to acquire different tools and different, pieces for installations that we were a part of. And every now and again, there was the acquisition of a novelty that was anonymously donated. But I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about the fact, one of the things I had to deal with was the fact that I wasn't any longer a city kid like I thought, dealing with metropolitan kids. It reminded me real quick of how country I was. And being from Lafayette, we tend to carry ourselves and consider ourselves very, very city. But I was definitely a country mouse. With the art house, just to tell you a little bit more about the art house, I found a chessmate or a chess player friend of mine who was from Barcelona. She was a transplant there, and she and I played chess every single evening. We had 2 40-foot, 50-foot trees that stood in the back of our yards. Huge trees, and within the trees were these environments within environments. So we had four-story and five-story tree houses that were connected by this very, very, very large rope bridge. At a couple of points within each of the trees, you can climb up to the very top and see across New Orleans. Just magnificent. It was just a beautiful experience. So incidentally, while we were there, I was giving a tour to three ladies who came across, and we had a lot of people that would come into our backyard and, just want to see the tree houses. They were amazing things to see. Well, these three ladies wanted to traverse up the treehouse, and at the time we were dealing with some insurance, red tape. So I advised that that we should not be allowed to go, we shouldn't go up this treehouse. Well, somehow they made it up the treehouse. And once you cross over from one treehouse to the next, there was a setup of a slide that slid down into a crash mat. And so the first girl went through, everything was good to go. Second girl went through, everything was fine. The third girl went through and she caught it just right and snapped her ankle in half. So needless to say, or long story short, I had to carry her to the ambulance, which was terrible because she was a lot bigger than I was, just tall person, large person. And it was just a tough carry, but soon after we were sued for that. And soon after that, we saw the treehouse shut down rather quickly and rather abruptly. It's never easy to see something that you really, really care about and that you've invested a lot of your understanding of yourself in, see it go away. But at that time, we all went through to our separate corners of the earth. Some of us even decided to raise families. Now, I know just as long as I wanted to be a writer, I knew that I always wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be a parent. It's just one of those things, it's tough to be a parent today when for one, because we all know how tragic the days have been and have become, but it's also tough when you know that your own parents, your teachers are limited in their own rights. So there's a lot to learn, but I was always curious and always asking questions growing up. And pretty soon those questions stopped getting answered, or those people who just could not answer the questions for me. And I knew that as a parent that I would want to have the ability to be able to address any number of situations that my kids would face. So when I look back at the art house and the things that I experienced while living at the art house, I picked up on a few things and life lessons that I want to definitely instill into and to give to my children. And, like living in such a place, it taught me how to accept people where they're at, and that different walks make different talks. So I needed to loosen up a little bit. I was kind of uptight at the time, and that especially comes in handy now when I'm dealing with my children, because no kid likes an uptight father. I knew that I needed to find that joy in life, and that it wasn't just going to fall out of a tree, that I had to go hunt for the joy. I had to go find it, search out for it. I learned that there was no better time than the present, and that, not to get hung up in the past or stare too far into the future that you miss your moment. When at the art house, I saw artists who were just burning for art. It was like a fire that they had in them that was just, it didn't matter how terrible they felt that day or what was going on that day. If they were just eating crackers and avocados, for a week straight, when it came down to creating art, they were there, they were dedicated, they were motivated. I want that for my children, no matter how terrible the world may be for them, I want them to take the time to go and hunt for something that means the world to them, that means more than the world that is maybe not showing up for them at that particular moment, or whatever the case may be. I want them to reach for communication and to understand that, like, that there's no better lesson that will be revealed to you than the lessons you will learn when you utilize kindness and compassion. And like those two things will yield you, and life will reveal you the best lessons in life. You know, even when judgment and malevolence is preferred, it's always best, you know, it's always best to choose kindness. Because I know that I'm not perfect at all. I'm a dad who tries his hardest, steps out when he can, always shows up when he can, always shows up. It's not saying when he can, but when I can. I'm open, you know, to learning, to growing, and the close relationships that I have with my children, I attribute to a lot of what I learned at the art house. I can't sacrifice that for anything else. Hopefully building a foundation for them that is strong enough to withstand even the toughest times, because they will have to go through those tough times, and that's just something that they won't be able to avoid as much as we'd like them to and like to protect them from. I still hold close a lot of my relationships that I had with those individuals at the art house. I held them with the utmost respect and love. I know some of them are probably listening right now. Love you guys. And I know most of us have heard the saying that home is where the heart is. And I'm not a fan of cliches. And I will say that I think it's probably a little bit more than that, and that it's a place where we get to see ourselves. It's a place where we get to work things out. It's a place where we can learn to be a family, and we can evolve to be people. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that experience and perspective with us. As a parent myself, I really appreciate that. And I want to thank all of our storytellers. Let's see them again. Chaletta Brundage, Justin Calais, Brittany Cook, Diana Lennon, and Charles Garrett. Thank y'all so much. Finally, let's remember that you can be part of the solution to child hunger by donating to No Kid Hungry and helping connect kids to healthy meals during this difficult time. Donate at nokidhungry.org/USA Today, where Humana will be matching donations up to $25,000. And thank you for sharing your time with us. Have a good night.